Hare Krishna, everyone. Hope all of you can hear me. You can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, very well. So, welcome everybody for another session on Bhagavad Gita. We'll continue our discussion. So today we're going to discuss a very important verse, one of the most important verses in Bhagavad Gita. Here in starting with this verse, actually, over a series of verses, Krishna elaborates on what is soul, what is the nature of soul, how we can understand soul by different analytical means, so that we have sound understanding on what the soul is, how the soul is different from the body. And so this is the first of those series of verses which elaborate on the nature of the soul. And especially this particular verse is very important, though all of them are important. It's something I would recommend, if possible, you might want to memorize. So we'll start that discussion shortly. Another thing before I start, I just want to check if you can see the chat option enabled or if it's not yet.
We don't see the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I think in the past the solution has been that I will delete the meeting instance and create a new meeting instance, which I already did before the class last time, but I'll give it another shot. Meanwhile, yeah, please feel free to interrupt me. I don't know why this keeps on happening, but yeah, either interrupt me or send a message on WhatsApp, whatever is easier. Either option's fine. Okay. Does anyone wants to say something? I see a hand raised.
Yeah, it's Sparrow. I think your voice is getting cut off, so I don't know if it's just me or others are feeling that too.
Is anyone else also experiencing that?
No, it's clear.
It's fine for me, Prabhuji.
Maybe, Parvan, you want to? Are you on like using a headphone or something?
No. Anyway, if I have to leave and come back again.
Okay. Yeah, if others also experience the problem, let me know. Maybe I'll also try to log off and log in. But yeah, if it's an issue for everyone, please let me know. Sometimes what happens is initially when I'm playing the video and I'm sharing the audio, computer audio, and if I don't turn off the computer audio after that bhajan is over, then I think it picks up background. I don't know what it does, but my voice does not come across very smoothly. But I just turned the audio off, so right now it's saying, see, it's the system audio is off, it's not on. So if it's on, generally it's a problem. So hopefully it's not an issue at my end. But if it continues, I'll try to log off and log in. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone had any questions or comments based on what we have discussed so far before we begin today's session? Okay. Very well. We'll begin with the 13th verse of the second chapter, titled Contents of Gita Summarized. And it's titled in this way because, as we will see in the upcoming verses, Krishna actually does answer almost all of the questions that Arjuna had. Basically the three arguments that Arjuna had raised earlier. So, Krishna does answer, the dilemma that Arjuna was facing right in this chapter itself. But then Arjuna had further follow-up questions, and then some things were not clear, and that's how Bhagavad Gita elaborated. And so that's why the chapter is titled Contents of Gita Summarized. Okay, so I'll recite the verse. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati. Translation: as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So here the soul is referred to as Dehinaha. So Deha means body, Dehinaha means one who accepts the body. So soul is here referred to as one who accepts the body. And then what happens to the body that the soul accepts? It goes through different stages of maturity. So Kaumaram is boyhood, Yovanam is youth, and then finally the body becomes old. So can anyone pinpoint a particular moment when the body is changed from boyhood to youth, or maybe say infant to toddler, or any we identify different phases of life, but is anyone able to pinpoint a specific instance when that change is happening? Anyone would like to comment on that? Especially today's discussion, I want to be more interactive, though it would be nice if we could have all sessions interactive, but I think it's an important topic, so I just want to make it a little bit more interactive. So does anyone have any comments, would like to comment on what is the instance? Can anyone point to a particular instance when the body changes from, say, infant to toddler, or toddler to boyhood, or boyhood to youth, or youth to old age?
I think one would be.
Can you say it loudly, Bolik?
Like your beard hair starts growing up, then you know that it's going towards the youth.
Okay. Yeah. So you see, there are distinct differences in the appearance of the body, but when is the change happening? Right. So Molly, you have a small child right now, right? So since if you try to remember since your boy was born, the baby was born, and right now what is it, 3 years old? So can you, and then if you see the photo of your child just after he was born, and then when you look at him right now, you you see you see a difference? Like it's quite a difference, right? In terms of obviously the size of the baby, but the teeth start developing, the hair and things like that. So do you agree that the two bodies are completely different?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But then when did the change happen? Can you pinpoint a specific instance when the change happened? Like every day, like let me phrase the question differently. When you wake up in the morning, when you look at the child, was there any morning where you say, hey, you know what, my child looks way different from what it looked the day before?
Uh, we have seen it like every week. The day he was born, Thursday, we see a difference in him. Either every Thursday he learns something new, and then every month. So, like he was born on 30th of August. So every 30th we see there is a difference.
Yeah,
And
in terms of the capabilities of the child, right? But
yeah,
when you look at
yeah,
the body itself, right? So when you look at the body, and then in the morning when you look at the child and you say, hey, my child is way different from yesterday. Did you ever, anyone had any moment? Either could be a child or some other family member or either someone who would see you on daily basis, and you have one particular day where you feel like this person look is completely different, his body is completely different from the day before. Do you have that? Did anyone have that?
No.
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 Okay.
No.
So what does that mean? But then if you, okay, let me ask another question. Now, suppose a relative of yours who has not seen your child or family member for a long time, let's say 5 years or even 2 years, especially for children, even if it's 6 months, their body changes much quickly. And they come and see, wow, it's like, I mean, you're seeing the child after a long time and say, yeah, he's so big or she's so big, right? And so much change. Or even for adults, if someone's seeing for a long time, your old college friend, like, you've changed quite a bit, you could have a little bit more chubbier, you put a little weight, or there are different so for them who is looking you after a long time, or anyone you are coming across after a long time, you see a big change, right? But someone who is looking at that person on an individual basis, that person does not see any change. So based on these two facts, that one person who is looking at someone or meeting someone after a long time sees a significant change, the other person who is seeing that same individual on daily basis does not see any change on a daily basis. Based on those two facts, what can you conclude? Anyone?
Maybe, Prabhuji, the change is happening so gradually all the time that person who's observing someone very closely, they do not realize that the change is actually happening.
Got it. Okay, so I think that's a very good way you summarized it, that the change is gradual and then it is happening at every single moment, right? Every single moment the change is happening, and the change is minute. So when the change is happening, so then now if you look at that drastic difference between, say, the change over 2 years of time, right? So what happened to the body that was existing at the time that baby was born? That body does not exist anymore, right? Or would anyone like to say? I think Parul, when you were trying to say something.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just yeah. So anyone would like to comment on what happened to that body which was born? It's a different body right now, right? We all agree it's a completely different body right now. So what happened to the body which was, say, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or at the instant that we were born? Right? Where did that body go? Anyone has any opinion or wants to make an intelligent guess?
So the human body is made up of lots of cells, and these cells dies and then grows back I'm not sure about the exact duration, but then it dies and grows back, and that's how the body changes.
Okay, so it is fair to say that over a period of X years, whatever that year X is, every single cell of your body would have died and a new cell would have born. right? Is it fair to say that?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that body is completely is dead. The body, which whatever we talk about, say X numbers of years ago, and that X could be any time frame, could be in seconds, could be in minutes, could be years, and we will come to that, what that time scale is. But let's say over a period of X minutes, seconds, hours, days, whatever, the body completely goes away and a new body appears. So one body completely dies and a new body completely appears. So I would like to show you a particular video, and then you can tell me what you see and observe over here. So let me I can maximize this. Let me just maximize the whole screen and you can watch this. So there are 3 videos over here. So the first one is metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. Second is one full flap of a hummingbird. And then third one is a tadpole changing into a frog. So again, the first one is metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. The second one is, I think, one full flap or swing of the hummingbird's wings. And then the last one is tadpole changing into a frog. So let's watch this once more and make note of what's happening. So everybody observed that. What did you observe? You want to comment on?
The initial state is and the final state are like drastically different.
Okay, what else? What was
Passing of time.
Passing of time. Okay, what else? What was the medium by which this was illustrated?
Visuals.
Yes, it's a flip book. Yeah, right. It's a flip book. What's unique about flip books?
So it's breaking it into little stages.
Okay. And then what happens when you flip the flip book?
When you flip it really quickly, it becomes like you see. I'm getting what you're trying to get to, Prabhu, but I'm not able to express myself.
Okay.
that it's when you flip it, like as the time passes, what you were saying earlier, that we are not able to realize how we have changed from childhood to adulthood. That is exactly what was happening here. But if you look at each page, we'll be able to see how things have evolved, but we don't look at our lives as page by page.
Right. Yeah, these are all valid points. The one thing that I was trying to show over here is a flip book consists of many frames. You can think of each page as one frame, and then the difference between 2 subsequent frames or pages is very minimal. And then when you flip it quickly, what happens is in a fraction of a second, or a frame is disappearing and a new frame is appearing. That's what's happening. Right? So each moment a frame is disappearing and another frame is appearing. And then because it's happening at such a high frequency that we do not see any change, in the sense that the change is happening every moment, but you don't see that change because the change is so minute and it's happening at a very fast rate. And all these 3 examples are very unique, in the sense that the first example that you see is a metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is basically, let me start the other way around. The first one, let's look at the example of the hummingbird. So in the case of hummingbird, it's motion, right? So even when the motion is happening, what is happening is the body is not at the same location. The movement is changing, the motion is changing, and when that is happening, It's like the frame is disappearing and new frame is appearing. Just like in the TV, when you look any sort of movie, you know, or anything that's happening on the TV has a very high refresh rate, right? In 1 second, I don't know how many hundreds of frames they are, you know, appear and disappear, right? And then there is a minute difference between those frames, and then at a high refresh rate, it appears as a motion picture, but each of them are still frames. The second one is like a tadpole growing into a frog. So the body is changing in the sense that body not changing, but it is growing. So even the growth is occurring by the same phenomena as the motion. In the case of motion, also the frame is disappearing, reappearing. In case of growth, also the frames are disappearing and reappearing. And the third example was the example of caterpillar changing into a butterfly. Now those two are completely different bodies. Like tadpole and frog, you can say that, you know, they are still similar in the sense that it's you know, from a very infant stage it becomes mature. But in case of metamorphosis, it's a complete transformation. Metamorphosis, that's what it literally means. It's a complete transformation of the body, right? That can be compared to changing of the body. When the soul goes from one body to another body, that also completely, you know, one acquires a completely different body. So TV works on this principle, right? So if you look at all the inventions that we have made, we have imitated nature. Just like we think of an airplane, right? To make an airplane an aerodynamic body, the earlier inventors, they studied, you know, about how are the bodies of birds, and then you sort of, you know, imitate that and try to replicate, you know, what is out in the nature. Look at any other inventions. All these principles, they all exist in the nature, like radar, where what radar does, it sends radio waves and which are reflected or back, and then the receiver, you know, based on that, they create an image. Well, that already exists in the bats, right? And so you think of any kind of scientific invention, it's already there in the nature. So just like, so similarly, television, which is refreshing still images at a very high rate to create motion picture, is a replica of Krishna's creation, which is of our bodies. So what actually is happening by this analogy is every single moment our body is disappearing and is reappearing, but with a slightly different configuration, right? So just like on the TV, there are pixels, right? If you look at the screen, you know, we are doing this video conferencing, but if you observe closely, you might not be able to see it, but the screen comprises of very fine, high resolution pixels. That's why when you go to buy a TV, it says 4K resolution, or, you know, it just basically tells how many pixels are there. As soon as you say pixels, that means there is space between the pixels where the light cannot be turned on and off, right? These are all LEDs, micro LEDs, and the LEDs are getting turned on and off, and each time with a different brightness, contrast, colors, and that's how these images are created. But as soon as you say there is pixels, that means there is a space between the pixels where the light cannot be turned on and off. But we don't see any space, right? Do you, well, when you look at the screen, do you see that there are pixels and there is space between the pixels? We don't see it because the pixels are extremely minute, right? Similarly, the space in which we are existing, everything that is existing, the space is also discrete. And what I mean by discrete is that it's also pixelated. It's not continuous. Now, theoretically, you can divide the space into any, you know, very small number, you know, but that's a theoretical division. You can say, you know, you have microns and you have picometer, nanometer, and you could keep on dividing the space infinitely, but that's a theoretical division. In reality, there is a smallest unit of space beyond which that space cannot be divided further. And how do you know that? That means, just like how do you measure space? You measure space with an object. For instance, if I want to see how long this room is, then I would use a measuring tape. So measuring tape is an object, and then the area or the span over which that object resides, I can measure it. Similarly, if you want to measure something very minute, theoretically I can keep on dividing the space infinitely, but there is no proof that space in reality exists at such a minute level. The only extent that you can prove the smallest unit of space is to the extent that you can find an object like a measuring scale to measure it. That means the smallest atom that can exist, and when I say atom, I'm not necessarily referring to science's understanding of atom, but I'm just saying it in a very general form. In Vedas also a description of atoms, and the understanding of those two might be different, but I'm just using the term generically. The smallest unit of matter defines the smallest, that means the space should be as small as that, at least as small as, not at least, at the most as small as that smallest unit of matter that exists. Say, let's call it atom. So that you can call it the size of the pixel of the space in which reside. So in case of TV, turning the picture on and off is very easy, right? You just have light that turns on and off. But how do you turn off and turn on the matter, right? Our body comprises of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And ether is space, by the way, right? It's empty space. So how is it possible that we can turn the matter on and off? So every moment, every second, our body is not dying once. It's dying, hundreds or thousands of times. You can think of it as a refresh rate. The body is completely disappearing and reappearing in every single moment. But each time when it reappears, it's in a slightly different configuration. Just like, TV, when it refreshes at a couple of whatever hundreds of frames per second, each frame is slightly different. And then we saw that in the example of flip book also. So the question is, how do you turn matter off and on? There's no scientific theory in the contemporary science that explains it. But in the Vedic philosophies, there is a philosophy of Sankhya, which explains how matter can be turned off and on. And I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on that so that we can, theoretically and at least understand, what is happening with our body, whether we talk about motion, whether we talk about growth of the body, or whether we talk about complete transformation of body from one form of life to another form of life. So I'll give you an example. Again, we'll make it a little bit interactive. So of the 5 elements of which the body is made up of, so if you talk about, so there are 7 layers of the body: Tvam, Mamsa, Rudiro, Snayu, Medo, Majja, Asthi. So Tvam is skin, Mamsa is flesh, Rudiro is blood, Snayu is muscles, Snayu, Medo is fat, Majja is cartilages, and Asthi is bones. So these are the, I believe, 7 layers of the body. Now all these 7 layers, they are all combinations of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, right? Everyone agrees with that. Like fire is, there's digestive bile juices in the body, there's things that create heat for, digesting the food. And that's one example. There's fire in our eyes, by which we can absorb the images which fall on the retina. So the fire exists in so many different subtle forms. Obviously earth, bones and things like that, they are very earthy in composition. And there is water because there are different kind of fluids. There are different kind of airs inside the body: digestive air, circulatory air, airs that facilitate movement, airs that facilitate inhalation, exhalation, excretion. Different kind of airs are present, and so basically is all combination of these 5 elements. So let's start with earth. Earth can be perceived by how many senses? Let's see. We can have some participation over here. You can, and one person doesn't have to answer all 5 or all the. If there are more than one senses by which a particular element can be perceived, as you realize, you can just say one of them or all of them. That's all right. I mean, and we can collectively come up with an answer.
Eyes, Prabhuji.
Okay, earth is eyes. Yeah, you can see the earth. What else?
Touch.
What is it?
Touch.
I can't hear you.
Touch.
Touch, yeah, you can feel the earth. That's correct. What else?
Nose, you can smell.
You can smell the earth, yeah, especially in India after the monsoon, we see, the earth has very nice aroma. So smell, what else? As a child, anyone has tasted earth?
Tasted, yes, yeah, taste.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a savory taste, but it has a taste. It's not tasteless. Okay. And then you can describe the earth by any language, words, right? So I use the word earth, and as soon as I use the word earth, it conveys an idea that you can understand. And so earth, so you're not right now you're not smelling earth, you're not seeing it, you're not feeling it, you're not tasting it, but you are still able to perceive it just because you heard the word earth. So earth can be described through a language or sound. And so that perception is also there. So earth can be perceived by all 5 senses. Okay, what about water? Let's again have a participation. Water, how many senses you can perceive water by?
All 5 again, Prabhuji.
Sorry?
All 5 again.
No, we cannot hear the water.
No, can you describe the word water, right? It's not about hearing. I'm just saying, can you describe it? As soon as you hear the word water, it conveys an idea. So you can definitely convey the idea of a word through language or sound. So you can perceive water through sound.
Oh, yeah. If you go to waterfalls, we hear the water. So that's another way.
I mean, yeah, that's a sound that water makes, but I'm more talking about describing it in terms of words. Yeah, but either way, okay, sound is there. What else?
Touch.
Touch, yeah, you can touch water. That's correct. What else?
Taste.
Yeah,
smell.
water, you can taste it. Taste, what else?
Smell it. See it.
Smell. See, you can see the water for sure. Smell. How many of you think you can smell water? What kind of smell does water have?
Doesn't have any smell.
Yeah, who else?
Does it have flavored water?
No, you're talking about basic, just water.
Okay, water. Yeah.
Does it have smell? Anyone who thinks water has smell?
Maybe the tap water that we get maybe have chlorinized, and that's the reason we get some smell.
Yeah, so that means earth particles are mixed with it. There is some pollutants or something that's mixed, something earthy that is mixed, that's causing the smell. But if there is no earth element mixed with water, there is no smell in the water. So the cause of the smell is not water but earth. So what makes earth distinct is it's the characteristics of smell, which is only present in earth. It's not present in water. So in the process of secondary creation or the primary creation, it's described that creation and destruction, both principles apply. When the quality of the smell is taken away from the earth, it transforms into water. Now, this is something we are not able to do it, but the Supreme Lord, by his mystic power, he can take away the smell from the earth, and as soon as the smell disappears from the earth, it gets transformed into water. Okay, that's the first learning. Let's keep moving on. Okay, fire. By how many senses you can perceive fire?
Skin. You can feel the heat.
Touch it because it has heat, right? It gives you warmth. So yes, so touch is there. What else?
You can hear it.
You can see it.
You can see it. That's correct. And then you can describe it in words. So there are 3. What about smell and taste? How does fire taste? Anyone has an experience how fire tastes?
We have tasted like really hot food, but not fire. Yes.
Yeah, so fire does not have a taste. Okay. What about smell? Does fire have smell?
The smoke from the fire can have smell.
And then smoke is it fire or is it earth?
It again becomes earth, yes.
Okay. So fire has only 3 characteristics. So fire can only be perceived by 3 senses. So fire does not have smell and taste. So water, when water loses the quality of taste, it transforms into fire, right? So that's the second learning, right? So the distinct, what is distinct about fire is the fact that it has the quality of taste, right? That makes it distinct from the fire. Excuse me. Okay, let's talk about air. By how many senses you can perceive air?
You can't see it first.
You cannot see it, okay?
You
can feel
touch
it.
you
You
can hear it.
can,
You can feel it, okay, because you can say it's humid outside, it's hot outside, the air is hot, or it's cold, or it's freezing, so dryness. So yeah, air you can perceive, you can touch. Okay, what else? Air you can describe in words. As soon as I say the word air, it conveys an idea. So it's perceived by the sound, and it's also perceived through the touch. What about see? Can you see the air?
no.
Okay. What about tasting the air? Can you taste? Does air have taste?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
And then smell.
Again, if you mix
Yes,
the
if it
earthy
is
elements,
polluted.
Yes. So it's either aroma or foul smell is because when earth is mixed with the air, but air itself does not have any smell. Okay. So the scriptures describe when the fire loses the quality of form, which is shape, size, color. When it loses the quality of form, then it transforms into air. Okay, so that's the third learning. Fourth, so now let's talk about sound. By how many senses can you perceive the sound?
only the ear, hearing it like ears.
Yeah, you can only hear it. You cannot smell it. You cannot feel it. You cannot taste it. You cannot touch it. You cannot, smell, taste, none of that. So sound is the quality of ether or space. And then according to modern science, they have a different understanding of space, where they say, well, the sound only travels through atmosphere, but sound does not travel through uh, outer space, right? That's what they say. But then you have radio waves that travel through audio, outer space, or they transmit images from Jupiter. So the idea is still conveyed, right? You can send the messages. So there is subtle understanding of what sound means, and it's when scriptures they call it sabda, and we translate that in English as sound, but the actual scientific understanding of sound is different from the Vedic understanding of sound. So when science talks about sound, it only talks about audible sound, but Sabda in Mahabharata and Bhagavatam are described that sound actually has multiple layers or subtleties to it. So the audible sound that we are conveying, it's only one, it's a gross manifestation of sound. So anyway, so Sabda or sound exists in the space. So if you look at it, when the air loses the quality of touch, it transforms into space. And so when it transforms into space, the matter ceases to exist. So at every moment, what's happening is our body, which is composed of these 5 elements, subsequently loses the quality of smell, taste, form, touch, and then transforms into space, which is empty space. And then again, it sequentially reacquires the quality of, in this order, which is touch, form, then you have taste and smell, and then again it transforms into all the remaining 5 elements. So according to the Sankhya philosophy, right now in the modern understanding is there is space, and within the space an object exists. So this phone is existing in space. But the Sankhya describes that matter does not exist in space. Matter is the property of space. How is it a property? When the space acquires all these qualities sequentially, it transforms into matter, right? Because space itself is one of the 5 elements, and it is the subtlest of the 5 elements, space. When the space acquires the quality of touch, it transforms into air. Air acquires the quality of form, it transforms into fire. Fire acquires the quality of taste, it transforms into water. Water acquires the quality of smell, it transforms into earth. So in this way, at every single moment, the matter is disappearing and reappearing hundreds of times, or we don't know what that high, but it's happening at a very high frequency. And so just like a flip book or a television screen, is these frames are disappearing and reappearing at such a high rate. Similarly, our body at every single moment is completely gone, and it's reappearing, right? And because the change is very small, we don't realize it. So I'll give you, let's go back to the example of a movie, where suppose in a movie there is a, say, a car chase that is happening in Los Angeles. I just picked up Los Angeles because there's so many cars in California. The car chase is happening at a very high speed, and it's the entire video is captured in one single frame, not one single frame, but in one single shot, right? And so all this high image, the frames are captured at a very high frequency, and the difference between each frame is very minute, and you cannot tell the difference. And when you play that in sequence, it appears like a motion picture. And when the car chase is happening, and then the audience is just engrossed in watching that, and you're not thinking technically about how all of this is happening. You're just immersed in the experience of it. Now the car chase is over, and while the car chase was going on, there was a minute change in each successive frames, but the car chase is over, and now there's a new scene, a new setting. Let's say now we move to New York. Now when we moved from Los Angeles to New York, what happened? Every single pixel on the TV, they had a significant change, not a minute change. What happened? Significant change, because it's a completely different picture. Instead of the highways in California, now there are skyscrapers in Manhattan. So what, so it's a complete change in the picture, right? So that means every single pixel on the TV changed significantly in color, contrast, right? Brightness, everything changed. Now, when the car chase was happening, the change was not necessarily happening for every single pixel, and whatever pixels were changing, the change was minute. Maybe, it moved, car moved 1 pixel left to 1 pixel right. Maybe brightness a little bit changed because the angle in which they are driving and the sunlight falling on the car changed slightly. So all the changes are minute. So in one instance, the change is minute. Another instance, the change is severe. But the process by which the change is happening in both cases, the technology, the mechanism by which that change is happening is still the same. What is that mechanism? That the pixels, they are turning off light and turning the light on. Everyone's following so far?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Now, you take that example of the body. Our body, instead of a frame, it's still a frame, but it's not a frame of LED lights which are turning on and off. It's a frame of matter. And the matter is turning on and off hundreds of times every single second, every single moment, every single fraction of a second. The matter is turning off and on. But the change in every single instant is very minute. Just like when a car chase is happening on that screen, that change is very minute in each subsequent frame. What happens at the time of death, the change is severe, in the sense that the soul acquires a completely different body. Just like you change the setting from highways in California to skyscrapers in New York, it's a severe change. But the mechanism by which the change is happening is still the same. The mechanism has not changed. What is the mechanism? Just like in the TV, the frames are turning off and on. In case of God's creation, the matter is turning off and on every single moment. The same mechanism applies whether a change is very minute or whether a change is severe. There is no difference, right? So that is the analogy. Now, is that analogy clear? And now I'm going to talk about what Krishna is saying over here, how we understand. With all this background, I think it will convey, some, it will give you a more perspective into what this statement implies, or what Krishna is saying over here. But is the analogy clear so far?
I have a question. It is very clear, definitely. But it's an extension question. Basically, when the death happens, you said it's going to a new body, but at the same time, the body that was there before, it's still there, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's a good
till
question.
they. So what is it
Yeah.
happening there?
Yeah, so the dead body is still there, but the body, now you can think of a flip book. So you go to the example of flip book. When you look at the flip book, when the focus is shifting from one frame or one page of the flip book to the next frame, the previous frames are existing. You see on the left side, they are not gone. I mean, they are still there, right? But what is your experience? What you're observing? You're not when you watch the video first time, second time, or even now, you're not paying attention to the pages which are already flipped and they're on the left side. Where is your focus? Your focus is what is in the center. What is right in the center? That's where your focus is. Similarly, the dead body, there is no. The body is there, but no one is experiencing. Neither the soul who was inside the body, that person is not observing or experiencing it, right? Suppose that body is dead. If you go and, if I'm sleeping, for instance, somebody comes and pokes me with a red hot iron, I would just jump out of the bed. Like, what's happening, right? Now with the dead body, if somebody puts a red hot iron on the dead body, that person is not going to jump, right? So the dead body is there, but it's not experiencing anything, just like those frames which have disappeared, right? It's in a way it's there, but that's not conveying anything. It's not part of the experience. And similarly, the family members who are there, what would they do? Either they would bury the dead body, or they would they would burn it in the fire, but they don't keep it, right? Why? And that's another way of asking is, people say, oh, they feel so much sad that, oh, this such and such family member passed away, and everyone's crying. And you say, you can come and ask them, why are you crying? He says, my relative passed away. What do you mean passed away? That person is still here. You say the body is still here, right? So why are you crying? That means the individual for which we are crying is not the body. It's the Dehin, right? That's why Krishna is saying Dehin. We are not crying for the body. We are crying for the Dehinaha, one who is inside the body, who is not in the body anymore. So yeah, it's a good point that you brought up, but the idea is what the focus or what the experience is. Now the dead body will cease to grow. It will still cease to, it will decompose. That is different. There's a difference between decomposing and aging. The dead body won't age any further. It would start decomposing, right? But as long as the soul is there, even if that person is 70 years old, 80 years old, he would, if the soul would still be existing in the body, what would happen? The body will continue to grow even more old. It won't decompose. There is a difference between decomposing and aging. It is the presence of the soul that is causing the sixth transformation: birth, growth, right? Maturity, steadiness, creating byproducts, offsprings, then then age and then die, right? So this, sorry.
I'm just saying, okay. So if I had to take the same analogy, like because the soul left the body, it is no more no more changing the, I mean, basically reappearing, I mean, no more the analogy that you mentioned, right? The body is appearing and disappearing
No,
every
that will
fraction
still
of the
happen.
second. That will
That will
still
still happen.
happen.
It will still happen. It
When
happens
the
every
soul
moment.
is.
But the instead of aging, as long as the soul is present, that object or the body at every single moment, when it disappears and reappears, when it reappears, it has slightly aged. Now, because the soul has left, it still disappears and reappears. But when it reappears, it's not aging; it starts decomposing. That's the difference.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Just like even an object, this doesn't have any life. But you see, this thing, the cover, when I brought it brand new, it was very shiny and transparent. But now you see how it is, the discoloration has started, right? You see, so there is transformation to dead matter also. But it's a different transformation. It's not the six kind of transformation. This would never grow in, I mean, if you put it in water or if it's soluble, it might start bloating, but that's not same as growth. It would not mature and remain steady like a body. It won't create any byproducts. It's not going to give birth to a small baby cover. And it starts discoloration, all that is there. So that is more like decomposing as opposed to, now plastics don't decompose as fast as organic matter, but it's not same as aging. I mean, we tend to use those words interchangeably. My car has aged or it's got old, but it's not the kind of aging that an organic cell experiences. And then it dies in the sense you can say that it might rupture one day and it's not usable anymore, and in that sense you can say it's dead, but it's not the same kind of death that a living entity experiences. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Thank you.
So here Krishna is saying, so he's giving the same example. He's saying that Arjuna, you are in this body, but he's saying we have seen the body change so much. The body that was there, say when you were a child or when you were young, that body is not there. That body is completely dead. So here Krishna is giving drastic differences over larger time frames. But by analogy, I explained that whatever Krishna is saying over here is also applies to the changes that's happening every single moment. But let's just talk about those drastic phases, in which Krishna is saying that Arjuna, that body that was existing as a child or during your youth, it's not existing anymore. That body is completely gone, right? But you were there. You are still there. You were there when you were in a child body. The child body has disappeared. It's not here anymore. It's completely gone, right? But you are still here in a different body, right? Similarly, in future, when you get old, your current body that you have would be completely gone, right? But you will continue to exist. Now, if you extrapolate the same logic at both the ends, what are the ends of the body? In the sense that you can talk about drastic changes. Drastic changes happen at the time of birth. Drastic change to the body happens at the time of death. So the first thing, even before we go to those endpoints, within the spectrum of those endpoints, what we can conclude is I am different from the body, whoever that I is. So he is referred to as a Dehin. Krishna is using a generic term. He don't use the word soul. He says our existence, whom we identify as I, is the one who is inside the body. He's called Dehin. Why he uses the word Dehin? Because Dehin is different from Dehi. Dehin is different from Deha. Deha means body, and Dehin means one who is inside the body. Why is it different? Because the body is gone. But you are still here. That means you are different from the body. That's the first conclusion. Does everyone relate to that? So this is the foundation before we can go to the next part, right? That I am different from the body. The body which I had even yesterday, and yesterday might not be too obvious to us, even 1 second before, and that also might not be obvious to us. But if you talk about body of ourselves when we were babies or kids, that body is completely gone. That everyone can agree, right? So that means I am different from the body. Does everyone agree with that part? Theoretically, you might not have, you know, personal realization, but theoretically everyone can understand that whoever that I is different from the body. Any comments? You don't have to answer it affirmatively. If you don't agree, you can say that. Anyone has any comments for or against?
I have not experienced or realized so far. So
Yeah, I mean, experiencing and realizing is a different thing, but theoretically, you know, we are trying to first understand theory before we have practical realization. So by the examples and the analogy we discussed so far, can we understand that, you know, we are different from the body? Because the body, that you might even have memories from, let's say, when I was in first grader, and you might sometimes talk to your mom like, hey, remember when I was, you know, 5 years old, and this is a prank I did, or, you know, this is a mischief I did, or I had whatever that the case might be, and you relate to your experiences in that particular form of existence or body. And then that means, you know, you relate to that form of existence. You were there at that particular time, place, and circumstance, and you are still here, but that body is not the same. That body is completely different, right? I mean, you can say that, you know, I might have some facial features which look like, you know, because somebody can say, yeah, you know, you carried on some facial features of it, but the body is still not the same. It's completely different, right? Even according to scientific understanding, someone was saying that they say science says even the cells, they are born and they die every single moment. Not every single moment, but they have some age, in the sense that they have idea, well, you have RBCs or red blood corpuscles, and they might have a life of, I don't know, I'm not a, you know, biology expert, but you know, it has certain age that could be months or years, and after that those cells die and the new cells are born. And then, you know, some cells, they have longer lifespan and some have shorter lifespan, but let's say the longest lifespan cell is 7 years, right? That's the number I somehow remember from reading a scientific text. So over a period of 7 years, you can see every single body cell of your body has changed. That means your body has completely changed. So that's another way to look at it. And then the Sankhya way, I explained that otherwise the matter, you know, motion cannot happen. If the space is continuous, the motion cannot even happen. That's why, according to quantum mechanics, they say the space is discrete. You know, that's why they don't talk about solid objects. Even what we consider as solid objects, they say they're quantums. You know, they are basically pixels in having energy or matter in the form of energy. Energy can change into matter or vice versa. And so they talk about everything in discrete or quantum way, because even modern science has realized that, you know, the reality is in a quantum state. And when the things are in a quantum, just like, you know, if you have two pixels next to each other, how can, you know, an object is across, say, 7 pixels, and it has to move right. That means the leftmost pixel has to turn off, and the pixel next to the rightmost pixel has to turn on, right? So the object cannot move across pixels directly, right? Because there is interpixel space where light cannot exist. That's why the simulation is the light has to turn off and has to turn on again at a new point, right? Suppose, you know, if you play a game, you know, sometimes you see, I don't know what the game called, but these children, you know, they make all these squares, right? And then between the squares there is a space there, so you can only jump from one square to another square. You cannot put your foot in the space between two squares. That you cannot exist in there. You have to just go from one location to another. But while they are jumping, they are actually crossing over that space, right? If the space is discrete, right, the matter cannot exist in the space between those two pixels where matter is allowed to exist, right? So if I have to move from here to here, how can I move? If the space is continuous, I cannot move, right? It's not possible. You can divide the space infinitely. They give another example. There is this Greek paradox. So you can say if I'm going to travel 1 mile, before I can travel 1 mile, I have to travel half a mile. Before I can travel half a mile, I have to travel quarter mile, right? Before I can travel quarter mile, I have to travel 0.125 mile. And you can keep on dividing infinitely, because theoretically a number can be divided infinitely. That means I cannot even begin a motion, because you say before I can travel 0.0001 mile, I have to travel 0.00000001 mile, right? So in order for the motion to begin, there should be a discrete finite, a minute number of distance that can be achieved in one go. It's not further divisible anymore, because as soon as if you keep on dividing infinitely, you can't even begin to take a step. I don't know if it if it makes sense what I'm trying to say, but just like for me to be able to eat rice, if the smallest unit of rice that I can eat, you can say maybe half a bite of a rice grain, or say one full rice grain. But if you keep on infinitely dividing, I cannot even begin to eat rice. You can say half a rice grain, quarter rice grain, even smaller rice grain, right? It has to be a finite value which cannot be divided any further. So by that analogy, you can conclude that the space and the matter is finite. It's discrete. It's not infinitely divisible. And as soon as you say discrete, the only way motion or aging or anything can happen is if the matter has to disappear and reappear. Just like on a TV, which is a pixelated space, you cannot move across from one pixel to another. The light has to turn off at one place and turn on at another place. Similarly, matter has to disappear at one place and has to reappear. Anyway, that was the analogy. So at least theoretically, we can understand that we are different from the body. The body is completely changed. When we were a child, that body does not exist, right? But we can, by our experiences, we relate. No, I was there in that body. I have those experiences, but the body is gone. But still, I am here. That means I am different from the body, right? Does that make sense? Theoretically.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. There is one question. Yeah, Parul.
Sorry, I have a question. So here we're talking about the fact that the soul does not change, right? It doesn't undergo any change, right? But your body is the one that changes. Yet
Yes.
in the prior verses, there was a discussion around like when you talk about the actions of one birth impacts where you end up in the next, right? And then I think those couple of
Yes.
in the prior chapter. So if the soul doesn't change, yet the current actions or the current behavior changes the next life, right? Like, so can you talk a little bit about like how the soul, like here we're saying soul doesn't change, but then it does carry something with it.
Yeah, so soul itself not change, but it's subjected to different experiences. Just like, if I go on a Disney ride, and I'm the same person. I'm sitting in the, whatever that, what's the term, like a, so I'm sitting in that cart on that ride.
Roller coaster.
Sorry.
Roller coaster.
Yeah. So the roller, there is on the train or whatever the ride, there are so many different carts, and they're all connected, and then each of us are seated in that cart. But when the ride goes inside, then there are different kind of experiences that we pass through, right? And I can't recall it, right? But if you go inside the dark tunnel and they have certain kind of images or projection paraphernalia, and then go into a next experience, and sometimes even tell a story, right? There's one I remember, like Peter Pan, and then they have the entire story of Peter Pan, and there are different themes of it. So you pass through one experience, and then you pass through another experience of that Peter Pan story. And so the idea being is that yes, because of our past karma, we in our desires, we would get a different body, right? And the gross body, which is a biological body, which is superimposed on us, just like our hand, the hand can wear different gloves, but the hand is still the same, right? So if it's winter, then I go out and I wear snow gloves. Or if I'm working in the garage and I want gloves that I do operate machines, or workbench kind of gloves. If I'm doing biking, then I wear a different kind of gloves. And based on the situation and the needs, I can assume different gloves that I wear, right? For golfing, it would be different, but the hand is still the same. So similarly, the soul, based on its gunas, karma, desire, it acquires different kind of bodies. And those bodies come and go, right? But the soul who is acquiring those bodies is still the same soul. That soul does not change. It's just like I'm wearing clothes, and then I might wear certain kind of clothes, but I would change that clothes when I go to sleep, and then if I'm going for a business meeting, I would wear a different kind of clothes, and then sometimes the clothes just become old and I would never use it. I would buy a new set of clothes, but it's still me who is wearing those clothes, right? So that's another level to understand that. Yes, so our experiences and it could change, and our past karma can change that. But the person who is I'm going to experience something based on my karma. I'm not subject to, my experiences are not effect of somebody else's karma. You see what I'm saying? So yes, my experience is that verse which you had asked reference for and I had quoted. Eko jantu prasuyate eka eva hi praliyate eko anubhungte sukritam eka eva cha duskritam. Everyone is born alone in this birth, in this world. They die alone, and each of us experience the pleasures of their good karma alone, and similarly the sufferings that we experience according to our bad karma is also alone. What I experience, somebody might have an empathy for it if they had similar experiences or close enough experiences in the past, or they just by seeing my pain from my body language, they might express some empathy, but still they are not experiencing that pain. I am the only one who is experiencing my pain, right? Mm-hmm. So and that would change even in this life. It changes. It's not same what I would be put through or what I'm feeling right now. I would feel, if I'm feeling morose, tomorrow I might feel happy, but it's still same me who is experiencing that, though the experience is different. Does it answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so then Krishna is doing an extrapolation. He says, okay, just like within this life, though your body has changed and you are still the same person, and since you are different from the body, if you do the extrapolation, the fact that you continue to exist though your baby body has gone and is dead, though you continue to exist despite of the fact that your youth body is gone and dead. Similarly, at the time of death, when there is a drastic change in the body, just like a movie scene changes from one location to another location, it's a drastic change, you will continue to exist. And the other extrapolation that we could do is at the instance of birth, because you are different from the body, and because the fact that you see you continue to exist, though the child body is gone and the youth body is gone, and because you are different from the body, you continue to exist. Similarly, we cannot trace the origin beyond the origin of the child body. That body, the minute changes which are only happening since the birth, or say since the embryo started developing. But before that, you cannot trace the history of the body. Similarly, after the death, when the body is burnt or decomposed, you cannot trace the future of that body. But because I continue to exist along all the phases of the body, similarly, it shows that I must have continued to exist even before that body was born or was developed in the womb as an embryo. Because the same mechanism, the fact that change is drastic, just like the TV, either the change is minute in a single shot, or if it's a completely different change, the change is extreme, but the mechanism by the change that is happening is still the same. Similarly, in case of our bodies, though the change is happening, either that change is drastic or minute, the mechanism is still the same, and that means we will continue to exist after the death of this biological body, and will continue to we continued to exist even before our current body was born. And that's the sum and substance of what Krishna is trying to say, and say the sober person is not bewildered by such a change. And why is he saying that? Because in the previous verse, what did Krishna say to Arjuna? He says there was never a time when you did not exist, when I did not exist. There was never a time when the kings did not exist. That means they existed in the past before they acquired their current bodies, and they will continue to exist in the future when the current body undergoes a drastic change. Though the change is happening in every moment. And what we call death is a drastic change to the body, but that change and the mechanism by which that change is happening at hundreds of times every single moment. And so one who really understands that actually the body is dying hundreds of times every single moment, then he should not be bewildered by a drastic change when that happens. And the reason why mostly people are bewildered is because they don't understand the difference between the soul and the body. They identify themselves as the body, and then because we identify ourselves as the body, we identify everything in association with the body in the sense of my family members, my home, my property, my wealth, and the fact that I would be drastically separated from all these things. And that is the cause of suffering, and the fact that no one wants to die. It's like, hey, everything that I'm familiar with is all gonna be taken away from me. And because that change is drastic. Just like if same example, that car chase is going on in Los Angeles, and the change is minute, and so you can relate to that entire experience. But now if the same hero or protagonist moves from LA to New York, there's a drastic change, and you're living behind that entire experience, and now it's a different scene. And because of our identification with that, we feel the pain. So Krishna is saying, if you just focus on the essence of it, that the fact that if you are suffering because you're thinking Bhishma, Drona, they will cease to exist. If they're killed in the war, they would cease to exist. But he's saying that, well, that's not the case. They won't cease to exist. There was never a time they did not exist in the past, and there will never be a time that they would cease to exist in the future, right? And only the body that they would have would be drastically different, but whether it's a drastic difference or a minute difference, that difference is happening in every single moment. So you should not be worried about body, because if you think, oh, still that body is important to me, well, that body is changing. That body is going away at every single moment, right? It's just that change just appears drastic to you. So that's why you should not be worried about body. Then what should we be concerned about? Soul. Okay, then the soul is always existing. It existed in the past, existing now, it exists in the future. So that's why there is no reason for you to be bewildered. That's what Krishna is saying. Okay, questions, comments. I think this is a very important point. I spent an entire class on it, but I think it's very important to understand. I think the further verses, they explain the nature of the soul in terms of, it cannot be cut. It's not affected by either of the five elements because it's not a product of the five elements. That means it cannot be dried by air. It cannot be burnt by fire. It cannot be made wet by water and things like that. And there are other further descriptions, but this is the foundational understanding of, even before we describe further qualities of the soul, like how we are different from the body and what is soul. And I just want to spend enough time talking about it. And this is the analogy that Krishna is presenting over here. And I just elaborated that analogy based on the contemporary times and kind of like we are all familiar with TVs and things like that. And, that's just that's based on the same principle of how our bodies is changing. And, all inventions are basically mimicking of things already in the nature. Now, the inventor of the TV might not have necessarily this realization that, hey, bodies are changing in this fashion and I can create in this television in this way, but the basic idea is still the same. Okay, we can have some questions, comments, agreements, disagreement. Anyone? Yeah.
So I have I'm just kind of curious. So when somebody dies, you say, well, the person's dead, but they continue to live in your memories, right? And the experiences that you've had with them, right? And the statement that always gets made is you really cry for yourself because you're the one, right? Is like as a person who was associated to the person who died. Now their body is still there, as you said, right? But their soul isn't, right? So there is no more memories to be created with this person or with this soul that existed, right? So it's always kind of interesting on the statement that gets made, right? And what it means on the surface, and then when you dig a little bit deeper, what they imply.
Right. Because it's a very important point, right? It's if it's really the body, then why we lament? The body is still there, but then the body is not alive. As you say, you cannot create any new experiences with that body, and it starts decomposing, not aging. And the idea that okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate over here, but the scientific understanding is, well, that consciousness is a product of chemical reactions, right? So there's no such thing as soul, but it is that different kind of chemicals, they react together and we have this feeling of consciousness. And so consciousness is a byproduct of biological or complex biological chemical reaction. That's a theory. Now, for any theory to be valid, you have to provide a detailed proof. I mean, otherwise it's just a hypothesis, right? Because then the proof has to be provided. Well, this particular chemical in this proportion, when it reacts with this particular ingredient, then the consciousness is created, right? So that does not exist, right? Then it just becomes a hypothesis. So then if you say that a consciousness is a byproduct of a biochemical reaction, then you have to provide that reaction. There's no such theory or proofs that have been ever presented, and neither can sometimes theories. A theoretical presentation comes at a later phase. If you see a lot of inventions, they actually do it practically and then they try to theoretically explain. Right, electromagnetism first, Tesla or whoever, they made a motor. I mean, he did not first write the equation of how the electromagnetic force on a magnetic field B with current passing through the coils with an ampere rating I, and there is a cross product of it, and the vectors have to be orthogonal. He did not come up with a theory. What he did, he practically tried that thing out and practically looked at how the motor is moving in the magnetic field, and after he actually was happening, then they came up with a theoretical explanation for it. So even by that logic, somebody has to practically show that how the chemical reaction is creating a consciousness. So if it is just chemicals, all the chemicals are still in the body, let's say somebody died in this fraction of say 601, the soul left the body. Now the decomposing of the body would not happen immediately, right? I mean, it would start immediately, but it won't decompose significantly in just 1 second, right? So all the chemicals which were there at 601 are also present at 602, right? So if you know, if that is really true, why can't anyone just, what is missing? Why can't that something be triggered again and you recreate consciousness? If it was just a product of biochemical reactions, right? That has never been done. So the idea that consciousness is a product of a biochemical reaction, there's no solid proof. It's just a hypothesis. Because that's a common argument that sometimes people pose. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
It's a different question. So, okay. Why? I do agree that the soul, the consciousness is not is us, and it is not the body, and the consciousness will leave the body and move to the next one. And I also take the point of the karma and the desires which we carry and the experience that we have, which we carried. So based on that, we'll get the new body and we'll have more experiences or more karma accordingly. I'm just trying to understand, if a soul is jumping from body to body for such a long time, why does he have to lose the memory of the past experiences so that he can actually use to improve himself, or use to go to the right decision, right? I mean, why does it have to lose the memory of it, like or I also heard some things about, like, people remember their past lives and they could remember all the things, but that means there is a reference for it. It sounds like something in the nature we actually have a mechanism to block that memory to us, memory, and that's the reason we don't remember anything and we just experience this life, and which actually the root cause of all the problems, right? If you just know this is how it is, I am, then why would I do one way, I mean different this time, right? I would do something useful, right? So I don't expect you to say answer here, but I mean, if you know any references for that, if you have already read anything about it,
Right.
it would be great to know.
Let me rephrase, just repeat your question just to make sure I got it right. I think the question is that why is it that we don't remember our past lives, except in very rare scenarios where somebody has past life memories? Is that the question?
Yes, in a positive way, like, we can use those experiences to guide it in a right direction, which way you want to go, or what is it we are learning over the time, right?
Yeah. So later in Bhagavad, in this same purport, Prabhupada does explain that. I'm going to pinpoint to why is it that we don't remember. I mean, he says that to some extent. So such changes of body account for varieties of enjoy. See, here it is saying, he's saying, Prabhupada is explaining that first of all, he's saying, telling Arjuna, you should not lament for the death of Bhishma or Drona. Rather, he should be happy that they are rejuvenating their energy. When they acquire, they give up the old body and they acquire a new one. So such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So what over here Srila Prabhupada is trying to say is that because we have different desires and different karma to experience different kind of enjoyment or suffering, we acquire different bodies. So why is even death needed? So just like if I have a credit card, I have certain credit, I cannot use more than the credit line that is extended to me. So my enjoyment in a particular body already comes with an expiry, right? So I'm entitled to enjoyment for a particular frame of time, and when that is done, then I would experience a different kind of pleasures and pain according to my past karma and the new karma that I created in this life. And for experiencing those kind of treatments or enjoyments and sufferings, I need a different kind of body. Just like, if I want to sleep a lot, how much can I sleep in a human body? The best body to sleep probably is, if bear, I can hibernate for 6 months. I'm just giving a gross example. So similarly, different kind of bodies, even in human species of life, they're suitable for different kind of pleasures and pain. That's why one body has to end, another body has to begin. And just so that we can focus, we don't want to be disturbed, when we are trying to enjoy something. Just suppose, if a child, is watching TV or having some fun, and you don't want to remind that child when that child is enjoying that, hey, there is a homework that you need to finish, or you want to chastise that child for something else he might have done at that point in time, right? It's just not the right time, because the child is in middle of experiencing something. Like the child at the time keeps on thinking, oh, I still have homework to do, or some other punishment that the child is subjected to for past misdeed, then he cannot enjoy that experience. Similarly, when I acquire a new body, and because of my past karma, if I'm entitled to certain kind of happiness, if I'm constantly reminded about my past misgivings, and if I remember all my previous births, then I cannot even enjoy, like, oh, I have so much karmic debt and so much I have to suffer in the future. So it's for our own good that we don't remember our past, except for some rare circumstances where the karma is like that, where karma is entangled in a way where that person is subject to memories of past life. Those are special cases. It's not an accidental thing. Their karma is such that they are made to remember their past life, and that has different implications. So otherwise, it's for our own good that we don't remember our past. So then, to answer the question, then if the flip side is, well, if you know that there is rebirth and everything, then you might be more serious and trying to come out of this cycle. Well, if somebody is serious, that learnings are still available through scriptures, through realizations. There are so many things. Just like we see instances of people who know their past life. That means by that we can say that level consciousness is different from the body. There are near-death experiences, there are out-of-body experiences, and then you have verses like this in Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures which explain by our theoretical analytical understanding, we can understand that soul is different. So that realization is still possible within the current framework, but remembering in all our past lives, even one life sometimes can make somebody's life, remembrance from just previous life can be different kind of misery. So it's for our own good that we don't remember that.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said. Like to experience it correctly, we should not have a pressure of something we should not know. I do agree with that, but at least the good points, right? So I'm a soul. I'm not a body. Just this one point. If I remember that, I wouldn't have go into this confusion of I am body and I spend my whatever the age that I am right now in that confusion. At the same time, that actually gives them a very clear picture for how they wanted to drive their life. Right?
I see what you're saying, but it's a double-edged sword in the sense that we came here to enjoy. And as long as we don't have aham or ego means aham, I am this or I'm that. Unless we have that false identity, we cannot have those enjoyments and pleasures. So it's But at the same time, the mechanism by which to get out, the hint is there, the links are there. This place is purposefully made miserable so that one who is intelligent, just by observing, okay, I do not belong over here. It's not what I'm looking for, I can never get over here. And so there is enough instances, or sorry, enough help and instruments available by which one can realize that he does not belong over here, and it's not a real identity. At the same time, it's because the soul has a free will, and that free will is there for every single moment. Every single moment we can decide whether I want to continue my enjoyment over here independently, or whether I want to go back. And sometimes that changes. That's why the soul is called Tatastha Sakti, or marginal energy. Just like on the beach, sometimes when we're standing, we are covered by the waves. Sometimes we are not covered by the waves. So sometimes the waves come and go. So similarly, we have that free will at every single moment. Whether even if we've taken a spiritual process, we might give up sometimes in between. So that opportunity is available every moment, and that's why the arrangement is made in this fashion, where there are enough clues for us to understand that we are not this body. At the same time, we have the options by which, if we want, we can continue trying to enjoy with our false identity. So
Okay.
that's what I would.
Prabhuji, don't the scriptures also say, maybe I'm wrong here, that whatever we do towards in the path of bhakti in this life, that gets attached to your subtle form, and you can reap the benefits of that in your following lives as well.
Yeah, so the gross body is dying, but the subtle body is carried forward. As long as we are in this material world, the mind, intelligence, and ego does carry from one life to another. And that's why some people, when they remember, they have explicit remembrance of their past life. But even if you don't have an explicit remembrance of our past life, the subtle impressions are there, the samskaras are there. That means, our experience, though we don't remember those experiences, the learnings,
yes,
the realizations from those experiences, they do carry forward, either good or bad.
Yes.
Yeah, those do carry forward. Those are not lost. Just like, some people, even they are naturally inclined to music. I was talking with someone when I was living in Florida, and she was a music teacher, and then she was mentioning someone in their friend circle. They had a baby girl, and then right from young age, she was so good at music and sargam. Like if you give any song to her, and she will immediately tell the sargam of it, whether it's rega, mama, sasal, you just give a song and she will immediately parse it into the proper sargam combinations. How did she get that? Right? I mean, maybe their parents were singers, that's true, but why was she born in a family where their parents were good singers? And did their parents really teach all that to her? No, it's not that she got explicit training to do that. Well, how did she was able to pick up? She carried it from her past life. Right? Was it Mozart or someone who became deaf at very young age, and well, he's an excellent. Yes, or was it from birth or at a very young age? One of them, I can't remember, but maybe at a young age he became. But then he's composed one of the best musical composition in the world. Well, how can a deaf person create it? Well, he must have carried it from his previous life. Where else did he get from? So some people are naturally able to do certain things. That means they put time, effort, or had some training or some scaras from previous life that they are carrying forward. So those things are there. Is that clear? Any other questions or comments?
We are over time. I had one question though, Prabhuji.
Okay. Yeah, so I can try to answer that. I mean, others, if you need to leave, that's all right. As usual, we will post the recording. You're welcome to continue, not a problem, but I just want to let everyone know whoever wants to leave. So yeah, go ahead. I'm listening.
Yes, Prabhuji. So one question that I get a lot whenever I talk to someone about Bhagavad Gita, is like, how come Krishna was never born? Like, how can we say that everyone goes through birth and death? Why isn't Krishna subjected to that? Why? What was that time when Krishna started existing?
Well, what was the time we started existing? There was never a time Krishna just said, there was never a time you did not exist, Arjuna. There was never a time I did not exist, Arjuna. Then what's the difference? Well, difference he talks about in the next verse. He's saying, the difference is, well, you don't remember your past life. I remember all the lives. That's the difference here. Right here he says that. See? There was a time I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. So yeah, we also did not come into existence at any point in time. Yeah, in terms of body, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So then in terms of I think I'll try. I think in later this chapter, or he says that, well, I remember everything you don't remember. I think it's, yeah, I think maybe in the 4th chapter. Yeah. Anyway, so to answer your question, well, if Krishna also accepts a material body like us, then why bother listening to Bhagavad Gita? That's what Prabhupada says in the purport over here. Right? Was it this purport or was the previous purport? He mentioned that. He's saying.
Yeah, he has mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah. So he says, if Krishna is also accepting material body like us, then why bother? Is as fallible as us. Then what's the point in listening to someone?
No, Prabhu, my question is not about material body. Like, even in this form that Krishna is, the spiritual form in Goloka Vrindavan, what was the time when it all started happening? Like, was there a time, like, or what is it, like, always existed like this?
No, always eternal, Ananta, Anadi.
Anadir Adir Govinda. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no Anadir Adir Govinda. Yeah, no beginning, no end. Our experiences in this world are that everything has a beginning and an end. So we are accustomed to think in that fashion, and so we bring that thinking. What we don't know is what we don't know. So or even if somebody say, there was nothing. Okay, where does that nothingness came from? You could always go on, right? So if there was a big bang, if you see the scientific theory, there was nothing, and there was this point of infinite mass and density, and that exploded. Why did it explode? Why did it explode at that time? Where did that infinity come from? Right? Even okay, let's forget about the Vedic theory. If you ask the same scientific question, then also I can question. We said, oh, everything was a big bang from that infinity, which is what they call it infinity only, right? It's a point of infinite mass and density which exploded. Okay, where did that come from? At what point in time? Then they say, oh no, time did not exist prior to that. So time actually began only at the instance of Big Bang. Okay, then what was so there was no time before that. There was nothing before that, and where did that nothingness come from? So it's inconceivable whether you follow science or from our point of intelligence, whether you accept the theory. If you follow the scientific theory or the Vedic theory, you have to. It's beyond our capacity to comprehend that, right? I mean, you can ask in both perspectives, right? I mean, it's so we always existed. And that's Krishna's creation. Anadir Ananta. Not just Krishna, we ourselves. There was never a point we did not exist in the past. That's exactly what Krishna is saying. I hope that answers your question. But
yes, Prabhuji, yes. Another question I had, Prabhuji, was when we were doing the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita discussion, we talked about how the soul would, let's say, attain Brahman. Whoever wants to attain the state, I mean, they are aspiring for that. Let's say they attain Brahman, but then because there's no activity, there's no satisfaction there's no association with the Supreme Lord.
Right.
So they fall down. So does that mean that if someone has attained Brahman, to go forward, they have to fall down again and then they use bhakti to go forward? Also, from Brahman to the higher stages, there's no progression?
That's a good question. At least Bhagavatam says that they fall down. I don't know if I have not heard any explicit reference which says that from Brahman they can have Paramatma realization or Bhagavan realization. I mean, for that to be possible, they have to be subjected to that experience. So somebody has to, all the souls which are Brahmaleen, somehow in that state, if they are able to experience the personality of Godhead, then yes, theoretically it's possible. But what's that trigger going to be? Like, how are they going to even experience that in a positive way in their Brahman existence? That's the challenge. And maybe that's the reason. But the only reference that I know is that they in Bhagavatam it says that they come down. So looks like they have to come down.
Okay.
But the thing is, they are not forced by time. It's just like unlike when you're heavenly planets or even in the body of Brahma, their time is over. In the sense that, hey, Brahma cannot say that, well, I want to live beyond. Your life is over, your time is over, and then you go into the next body, which could be a material body or a spiritual body. But when somebody is Brahmaleen, they are beyond time factor. And so the only thing that will cause them to come down is their own will. So it depends on the soul, how long they can hold in there. It's not easy to achieve that position to begin with, but once it's achieved, it's it's as long as they want, they are there. But then they are not. They are in the platform of neutrality. The question is how long one can remain in neutrality, devoid of positive experience, and that could vary. And there's no time over there, so you cannot even put a time factor that generally after millions of creations or whatever that time frame is, there's no concept of time. It's beyond the realm of the spiritual world. There is no time. There's an experience of time, but there is no time. We'll talk probably about that some other point in time. Yeah, there's a question. Maulik, I see your hand raised.
Jamin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So I was just wondering that we are discussing that like soul leaves the body and then it goes to another body or goes to incarnation. So if it cycle is like this, so can we say that the number of souls existing in the world are finite, not infinite, and then when they go from one birth to another birth, maybe like we are playing a video game, we go to the next level towards getting moksha, and then you get awareness about going towards there. However, you exist into a different body, and within the finite span of your life, you maybe move to the another level based on what kind of karmas you did, and when you move to the another birth, maybe you are surrounded by the similar souls or the ones who are continuously interacting with you maybe in the previous birth, and that's why somewhere there is a conception like when we marry also they say that 7 birth both the souls will be together. So is there all the connections? I was just wondering.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of questions in there. Yeah, so first, number of souls, yeah, they are finite, though it's an very inconceivably big number. If you think about all the small blades of grasses and bacteria and viruses, and there's just souls everywhere, it's an inconceivably big number. But yeah, there are finite numbers of souls. But from our perspective, is practically infinite. But it is a finite number, yes. In terms of each subsequent body that we get, are we making definite spiritual progress towards liberation? Maybe, maybe not. So here in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna 14:18, we will learn, it says, Adho gachanti tamasaha. Adho means going down. So even can go down also. Persons in the mode of ignorance, they go down into a hellish existence, and doesn't mean necessarily the planet hell, which also exists by the way, but the fact that once even in this earth, you know, if you see, look at lives of some individuals, it's more sufferings and others are relatively more comfortable. And so we can go upwards or we can go downwards. So by cultivating the sattva gun, we can go up. Urdhva gachanti sattvatah. By cultivating the quality of goodness, sattva, we become more like devas, demigods, and we get the bodies of devas. Madhya tishtanti rajasa. By acting in passionate activities, we take birth on this earthly planet, which is full of passion, industries, business, you know, passionate creatures. And then by cultivating tamasic adogachanti, we ignorance and lower propensities, we can degrade into animal species of life. So we can go either way. In terms of being involved, karmically involved with our family members, friends, relatives in subsequent lives, that yes, that could be possible. Everyone's karma is different. Doesn't necessarily mean that every single time whoever we come into contact are necessarily people with which we are bounded in previous life, but it is possible. It could be, could not be. It might not happen in immediate lifetime. It could happen after many lifetimes. So karma is very complex. The idea that you're married with someone for 7 lifetimes, I think it's more of a Bollywood fascination. At least I am not familiar with any sastric injunctions which says that. It does say that if husband and wife, they perform bhakti, devotional service together, they will go to the spiritual world together and they would continue to serve in that husband-wife relationship in the spiritual world. But as far as existence on the earth is concerned, there's no nothing which says that, well, you're married to that individual for 7 lifetimes on this earth. There is a quotation from scripture that does say that how sometimes our enemies from previous life, they come as family members in our lives. And how do we find out? Well, it says, what does it say? ऋणवत् पिता शत्रु माता शत्रु व्यभिचारिणी रूपवती भार्या शत्रु पुत्र शत्रु अपंडितः. ऋणवत् pita शत्रु. If if the father has acquired a lot of debt, so in the Vedic culture, right now in the modern world, there is no bonded labor. The debt of the father is not passed on to the children. It's against the law. But traditionally, in all the cultures of the world and in Vedic culture, the debt of the father, the son continues to pay. So if the father has a lot of debt required, it passes on to the son. The son must know that this individual who is father in my current life was my enemy in my previous life, and he has come as a father, my father in this life. Mata Satru Vyabhacharini. If one's mother is not of a good character, and as he has illicit affairs, then one must know that she was an enemy, one's enemy in previous life, and she has come as a mother in this life. Because a person whose mother is not of a good character, that person does not have a good reputation in the society, and somebody might even question the paternity of that individual. And so Shastras say that one can know if one's mother is an enemy from previous life or not. Rupavati Bharya Satru. If one's wife is very beautiful, then one must know that she's an enemy from previous life, and it is counterintuitive. And like, what do you mean if she's very beautiful? But the definition of beautiful is described differently in the scripture. It says, Kokila nam swaro rupam nari rupam pativratam. So what is a rupa? Kokila nam swaro rupam. The rupa of a kokil or a cuckoo is its sweet voice. Nari rupam prativratam. So it's not talking about physical beauty necessarily, but a wife who is very fully dedicated to the husband. He's always take care of the husband very nicely, serves nicely. Then the husband is naturally very attached to someone who becomes soft-hearted and is very attached to one's wife naturally. And according to the Vedic tradition, at an advanced age, one has to give up family life and take sannyas. And so if one is very attached to one's family members and wife, then even in an advanced stage, one might not be able to, give up family life and take sannyas. And so in that sense, this is one way to understand. They say, it sounds a little very extreme or harsh, but it says that it's good to have wife who is very conducive, and so I'm not criticizing that in that way, but it's one perspective scriptures give that that it could be an enemy from previous life. And putra satru apanditah, when a son is a fool, is not an intelligent or a learned man, then it just brings, he becomes a cause of shame for the father. And so one must understand that that one's son is an enemy from previous life if he's not very intelligent or a dumb individual. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but there could be more to it. But this is some uktis which are described in scripture that gives us some idea on if some of our family members are enemies from previous life. Well, that's, I don't know, that probably there is other description which describes where if they are friends from your previous life, then how do you understand that could be there. But it's not always that we are implicated with people who are enemies, but sometimes we are implicated with people in our current life with which we had favorable terms in previous life. So that's also possible, but it's not always the case necessarily. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Anything else, or can we conclude the class?
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.